Mr. Chairman, thank you for calling a very timely hearing. Over the past few months, we have watched the President impose a series of trade measures against our allies and adversaries alike, seemingly without considering the impact of these actions could have on important strategic partnerships. I appreciate that your legislation, Mr. Chairman, addresses this issue, and although you and I may have different views about some of our existing and proposed trade agreements, the recent vote on the Senate floor shows strong bipartisan support for pushing back on what I believe is the President's disruptive action. We have witnessed more of this action on display as he's meeting with our NATO allies this week, arguably our most important partners in creating and sustaining critical agreements that keep our nation and our citizens secure. His erratic actions, coupled with his denigrating remarks, do not inspire confidence. As it relates to the subject of this hearing, I believe that decades of unfair trading practices have left American workers, businesses, and families hard hit. It's critical that we strategically assess the real challenges and threats to American workers. Recent economic analysis has again revealed how China's economic rise over the last generation has severely damaged some of America's hardest working people in their communities. China has driven global overcapacity in steel and aluminum, a problem that the rest of the world shares with us. We must indeed go after China's subsidization of these materials and their dumping onto the global market, which has shuttered factories across our country and put too many Americans out of work. Separately, as many of my constituents in New Jersey know too well, we must also aggressively go after China's expropriation and outright theft of our patents and copyrights. American families don't need spreadsheet analysis to know the economic implications. These actions are real. So now, following the Section 301 investigation into China's policies on technology transfer and intellectual property, the administration must take action to reverse the damage done to U.S. workers and companies. Success, however, will require more than a never-ending escalation of tariffs. To support hardworking Americans, we need a strategic, coordinated response from all countries that China's predatory practices have disadvantaged. Sadly, the administration has begun a reckless campaign against our allies, driving them into the arms of our adversaries instead of leading a joint effort to address the serious challenges of China's economic policies. As the NATO summit this week in Brussels reminds us, United States leadership in the world, our ability to meet the full range of global economic, environmental, health, and security challenges we face requires sustainable, trustworthy partnerships. Whether confronting Russia's disruption of democratic institutions here and among our European allies, working with our Latin American neighbors to cope with the instability driving families from their homes, or responding to China's aggressive moves in South China Sea, we're stronger with the alliances built on shared history and values. But remarkably, Mr. Chairman, the President saves his harshest words for our allies who fight alongside us in the fields of Afghanistan, alongside us in the fight for freedom and democracy against Russian aggression, and who are on the front lines of Chinese economic imperialism in our own hemisphere. So I look forward to our witnesses. I hope the hearing will help illuminate the administration's confusing flurry of tariffs and trade restrictions. I hope we can agree on who our friends are and who our adversaries are, which are the right tools and the right priorities. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you just said that Canada is not a national security threat. Did I hear you right?
Yes, Senator.
Well, but Section 232 is that the President has invoked, actually, has to sustain that Canada is a national security threat. So if it's not a national security threat, how is the President using Section 232?
Well, thank you, Senator, for that question. As I indicated previously, Section 232, the language indicates that the competitive viability of our domestic industries is needed in order to maintain national security. In addition, it states that a weakened economy inhibits our ability to maintain our defense industry, our defense capabilities. And so therefore, under 232, the President has determined that this global steel and aluminum overcapacity does
Really?
Impair our national security.
Really? Does Canada present a greater national security threat than China?
Senator, China is considered our largest threat, and to that end, the President has instituted very tough measures to protect our intellectual property, to protect our innovation, to prevent the Chinese from imposing unfair trade practices, from distorting markets.
Does Canada have a defense production sharing agreement with the United States?
I'm not aware if we do or not.
The answer is yes. It has a defense production sharing agreement with the United States, yet we say that it's a national security threat, while at the same time that they're in the midst of producing defense elements with us. Do you believe our allies are going to be more or less likely to join us in a coordinated action against China when they see the administration being tougher on allies like Canada than China?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. Our allies and partners share our frustration about China's economic coercion. And I personally have had many conversations with allies all over the world about cooperating against the Chinese economic threat. They are as concerned about China as we are.
Yes, the problem is that instead of building a coalition that was willing and wanting to confront China through the international forums that we could execute through, we attacked them. We attacked them. So what's the administration's strategy to respond to China's escalating retaliation and bring them to the negotiating table to deal with underlying issues? More escalation? I mean, I don't understand what is the pathway here at the end of the day. So we slap a series of tariffs on them. They reciprocate and retaliate and add tariffs to us. Where is the end game here?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. It's an important one. Our end game is for China to change its behavior. We want to demonstrate to China that we are willing to take strong measures to force China to change its behavior, which distorts markets, which has contributed
Madam
to—
Secretary, I know I don't mean to interrupt you. My time is limited. We share the end game. The question is, what's the strategy to get there? Tariffs slapped in the action that the president has done, then gets retaliatory tariffs. And then the president retaliates against those tariffs. And then China says they'll retaliate against those tariffs. Tell me, what is the strategy at the end of the day to achieve the goal that you just enunciated?
Well, Senator, President Trump has determined that tariffs are the most effective means to achieve this goal. For the last several decades, we have been having many conversations with the Chinese. You'll recall our economic dialogues in which we tried to make progress, and this problem has not been solved. So President Trump has determined that tariffs are the right tool to be used in this situation to get the Chinese to change their behavior. We need to see real action on the part of the Chinese, not just the ongoing conversations that they keep having with us.
Well, listen, Madam Secretary, I regret that you were sent here because I don't think that you're really in the mix here on this issue. And you're sent here as cannon fodder at the end of the day, which is really a challenge. But the problem is I have heard no strategy whatsoever that suggests how this is going to end up. I don't even know how we're using 232 to gain leverage on other issues. For example, a July 8th New York Times article reported that the State Department threatened Ecuador with punitive trade measures. It refused to drop a resolution on breastfeeding at the World Health Organization, which I asked the article be entered into the record, Mr. Chairman. How is it that we're using Section 232 on something like that?
Well, Senator, I'm aware of the breastfeeding resolution, and that media report was false. The department has confirmed that that was a false report.
So you're not using 232 as it relates to anything other than national security concerns?
Well, we're using 232 so that we can give our domestic steel and aluminum producers the ability to regain their industries. We want the domestic industries to be able to have the capacity to supply needs for our critical infrastructure, for our defense needs. 232 specifically states that the viability of domestic industries is in the interest of national security.
Well, we're all for helping the steel industry in the United States, but the manner in which this administration is going about it is going to have huge consequences for middle America, for middle-class families, for rising costs, for farmers in the country, and for lost jobs. And so at the end of the day, I think you're going to wreak more havoc than you are going to create the result you want. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.